Good Sunday morning. Hope you are doing well. You know, we are in the Omer period. When we say the Omer, we refer to two things. Number one is the actual count, which begins on the second day of Pesach and ends with Shavuot. Today is day 10 of the Omer. But it also refers to the minhagim that we have, the customs that relate to mourning. We find the roots for these practices in the Talmud, where the Talmud tells us that the great Rabbi Akiva in the 2nd century had 12,000 pairs of students. And unfortunately, they died during the period between Pesach and Shavuot. And at some point afterwards, we've developed these customs and we have these traditions of commemorating that loss with a few practices of mourning. For example, no weddings. We don't get haircuts during this period of time. Now, in different communities, they actually developed their own traditions regarding when exactly to keep these practices. We find, for example, in Provence, in southern France, where they had a tradition that, yes, the disciples of Rabbi Akiva died between Pesach and Shavuot, but they only died, in the words of this tradition, ad pros atzeret, until a half a month before Shavuot. So that explains why many communities have the tradition of only observing these practices up until day 33 of the Omer. Fine. And then there are communities, these are communities and practices that originated in Germany, where they suffered greatly in the year 1096 during the First Crusade, where communities were really wiped out during that period of time, and they all occurred in the months of Iyar and Sivan, and therefore the mourning only starts Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and therefore they keep their 33 days of what we call Omer mourning, starting Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Fine, so these are practices that we are familiar with. We are aware of the fact that there are no weddings. We are aware of the fact that we don't get our haircuts. Some people have a practice of not listening even to recorded music, which obviously is a later tradition. Others are more lenient. But the bottom line is, if we indeed are practicing in some way mourning, we have to be mindful of the message behind it, not just to do it in a robotic way. So the Talmud tells us that you should know. You want to know why these disciples of Rabbi Akiva were punished? And by the way, although the Talmud does not spell out how they died, there are those who believe that perhaps when these disciples are mentioned, they're not the traditional disciples who are sitting in the study hall studying Torah, but rather they are the followers of Rabbi Akiva, and perhaps the soldiers who fought with Bar Kochva, who was a follower of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva actually believed in Bar Kochva as well. Whoever these individuals were, the Talmud tells us you have to know that there was a flaw there. Shelo nahagу kavod ze bazeh. In other words, the rabbis had the ability to look at a crisis, to look at a challenging situation, to look at a tragedy, and to point out there is an area that needs improvement. And the improvement that is required during this period of time is linhog kavod ze bazeh, to honor one another. In other words, you had these disciples, you had these individuals that were committed to Torah study and to Torah values. But to some extent there was a flaw, a lacking of respect to the other. And that is what the rabbis want us to work on during this period of time. Now, before we respect the other, we have to first respect ourselves. We have to realize that, number one, we have within us a divine spark, a divine spirit. We are created in the image of God, and therefore we must respect ourselves. And then when we do good things, like we study Torah and we perform acts of chesed, or we turn to the Almighty in prayer, we have to realize that we have great value. Once we have a respect for ourselves, we could start respecting others who do the same. And that is really what the focus is supposed to be during this period of time. And it's no coincidence that Rabbi Akiva, the master, the teacher of these students, of these individuals, would tell us, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ze klal gadol b'Torah." In other words, we are always told, love the other, kamocha, but first start off with yourself. Love yourself. Appreciate what you are doing. Value who you are. It is so fundamental in Judaism. To look in the mirror, or even without looking in the mirror, know that you have value, you have significance. You have value because of the spirit, the soul, the neshama that is within you. You have value for the wonderful things you do every single day. When you value yourself for the right reason, then you could in turn value the other. And then there is a nahagу, kavod ze bazeh. That's obviously what the message of this period of time must be. And hopefully, when we are dealing with this challenge of being disconnected, when we meditate and realize self-value and the value of other, we could prepare ourselves that when we reconnect, we do it the right way and the best way possible. And that's the greatest salvation. When a person learns the message from a period of time and focuses on what this period is there to teach me, and he walks away with the lesson, that's a success. And that's what we have to focus on during this time of uncertainty. Let's focus on this idea of self-respect, respecting the others, and hopefully by doing that we'll build up our merits to see a Yeshua, refuah shlema to all those who need it. We should hear good news. Have a wonderful day.